Maresca cannot rotate. That's my biggest takeaway. Chelsea beating Cardiff, it won't be remembered by Chelsea fans in 2 weeks' time, let alone by the end of the season. But one thing tonight showed to me, one thing tonight demonstrated to me, is that if Enzo Maresca rotates too heavily, the quality in Chelsea's side drops. That isn't a dig, that isn't me being salty, it's me being honest. I think there's a message in there as well to the board, and I think his message in the last few days, I'm not a big fan of conversations being made public. I'm not a big fan, not conversation, internal conversation being made public, dirty linen being aired publicly. Not a fan of that, so I'm not going to suddenly pretend that I am. But I understand where he's coming from. There are some players in this Chelsea squad who I rate massively. Caicedo that played tonight, Cucurella, we know how brilliant he can be. I think Cole Palmer is amazing. I think young Esteval has got talent for days. Reece James, I believe he's one of a handful of players I've seen in the last 2 decades who is world-class in 2 separate positions. You know, I'm not a big fan of Rob Sanchez, but I think he's actually had a very good season. And I'll always give people credit where it's due. But when Chelsea start to rotate, and you look at tonight's team, and Caicedo's the first teamer. I get why he played tonight after missing 3 games. Santos is what I call a first-team squad player. And what I mean by that is in the squad, but regularly gets into the first team, comes on as a sub, okay? You have Tosin and Badiashile that are in that same ilk, and then you have Gittins. You've got those 4 or 5 players. I wouldn't... Achapong, I'm not going to put... I know he's had a few first-team appearances, but he's a youngster. I didn't feel that Santos, Badiashile, Tosin or Gittins did themselves any favours tonight. And Santos is really young, so I'm not going to judge him. I know he got himself an assist tonight. I think he improved as the better players came on, which tells me good member of your squad, could develop, but you need to play him when your Caicedos, your Enzos, your Reece Jameses, Cucurella's, Netos, etc., Pedros, when they're on the pitch, he can be there. When that team was weaker, where, for instance, he's got Tosin and Josh Ashington behind him, when he's got George and Buendanotte ahead of him on that right-hand side, he isn't good enough yet to carry that off as many of the other players would. Gittins is a player that I loved watching play. I watched him play, 20, 30 games for Dortmund and loved his dribbling. That's one thing I thought he was going to bring to the Premier League, bring to Chelsea, and that hasn't been there. Guiu, I know Chelsea fans keep asking for a figurehead up front and not to play João Pedro there. I just don't think he's very good. I don't think he's very good. And you saw the levels tonight. You saw the levels of Chelsea in that first half with that team. And what Maresca cannot do, and I reiterate this again, no salt, no nastiness. I don't know when this season now. I don't know what games you're going to have. Maybe if you draw, I don't know who you've got in the FA Cup. You guys can probably tell me. If you've got an easy draw, if you've got an easy game in the FA Cup, maybe some heavy rotation in that game. Maybe if you qualify in the top, maybe if you don't need to play a strong team for your last Champions League game because you got Charlton away. Where are Charlton now? They're in League One as well, right? I think Charlton are in League One because they played Leyton Orient the other day. No, they're in the Championship. They're in the Championship. So the Championship. So you mid-table, lower level, lower Championship team, you might be okay again to rotate a bit in that. But your semi-final of this competition, your proper Champions League games and your Premier League games, you can't be heavily rotating like you did at Leeds. And that weren't even to this level. They're not there. They're not ready. You'll get knocked out of competitions. You'll lose too many points in the Premier League. And the board have got to look at this, and whether you can flip some of these players, loan them out, flip them and make some profit, Enzo Maresca and Chelsea Football Club, and more importantly, the fans of Chelsea need better players in those areas. Okay? Now, what you get is there'll be comments that will come through from people. Like this one I'm going to put up on the screen now, which is Grimsby lack of awareness. Now, my football club being crap, Man United being abysmal, does not discredit what I'm saying here about Chelsea. The only way that would make any sense is if I was using Man United as the barometer and I was measuring you against us and talking about how much better we were than you. That is a ridiculous deflection technique. What I'm talking about here is football, my friend. What I'm talking about here is how Chelsea win things this year. Because you can win the Carabao Cup. You're good enough to. You can win the FA Cup. I still think Chelsea could win the Champions League. The league title, no, because of the squad. League titles are not won by starting 11s. They're won by squads because of injury, and rotation is going to be needed. Okay, but cup competitions now, my message to Maresca is don't rotate heavily, and you've got a chance of winning them. It's as simple and as straightforward as that to me. What I will say is the substitutions that came on, I'll give them some credit. Now, a lot of people, you'll get the childish banter of they found their level and all that crap. I'm not going to play those games. I'm not going to play them. Because the Garnachos and the João Pedros and Netos, they had to come on and they had to take it seriously. They had to come on and inject some intensity. And intensity and work rate have probably in the last decade become two of the most underappreciated facets and attributes of a football team. And I think the reason for that is because people, I think too many people think that everything's about ability, touch, technique, and of course they play an integral part of the game. But with a lack of intensity, with a lack of work rate, you can come out second best to professional teams that play a level 2 or 3 below you. And I think when Garnacho came on, when Pedro came on, and a little bit later in the game, Neto, you saw that intensity. For the first time in the game, you pinned Cardiff back. And the first goal that came, yes, there is the knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, the young lad at the back, he plays a bad pass, he was unlucky. You know, Chelsea got lucky because there was a mistake. But that mistake for me happened because Chelsea were applying the pressure. They were pinning them back for large parts of the game. So I want to say it was Lawler that made that mistake. But it stems after heavy pressure for 10 minutes as an example. Then you couldn't kill the game off, and there was a setback. It was a really well-worked goal, a brilliant cross and a wonderful header. And I think Gusto does deserve a fair amount of criticism for the goal because he lets his man just run past him. He burst into the box like peak Frank Lampard and scores a brilliant diving header. But again, these Chelsea players on the pitch had to respond to that because then you're staring down the barrel. You've got 10 minutes to go. You're staring down the barrel and you think, wow, you know, if you do get knocked out after leading against the League One team, you know what the headlines are going to say. The manager's going to be in a lot of trouble. The fans are going to be disappointed. And again, Chelsea just kept themselves composed. It only took them 7 minutes after the goal went in. There was an injury as well, actually. So in terms of ball being in play, it was only a couple of minutes. Got the ball up the other end. And then again, the star quality of Neto shines through. Bang, and a goal. And then late, when Cardiff are really going for it, Cardiff are really pushing for it, Garnacho with his second of the game. Very good goals from him, very good finishes from him, very clinical from him. And Chelsea are now in that semi-final. So the good thing is, as frustrating as Chelsea fans might feel with the performance, you can brush yourself down. You live to fight another day, as they say. You can brush yourself down, wipe your mouths, and know you're in the semis. Don't know who you're going to get yet. Let's wait and see. It could be Newcastle, could be City, could be Arsenal, could be Crystal Palace. Is that who Arsenal playing, Crystal Palace? Next week, there's some really tough teams remaining in it. But there's an opportunity now of Chelsea's first domestic trophy in, 7 years, to come back to Stamford Bridge. I'll end it by saying what I started on. Maresca, do not rotate. Go for the trophy. Go for the W, because your first team and your first team fringe, like sort of your first 13, 14, 15 players can win you it. You start going deeper than that, and it could be big trouble. But as ever, please like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Well done to Chelsea subs, more so than anything, coming on and getting the job done. And a big commiseration to Cardiff City.